Hello, and welcome to Bada Boom. On this episode, we have on Ghost Machine founder and creator, Geoff Johns. Johns is known for his iconic runs on The Flash, Green Lantern, and many more at DC. We talk today about starting Ghost Machine, a people-centric creator-owned company focused on storytelling, founded and run by creators. We discuss Geiger, Junkyard Joe, and Ghost Machine's first title under their new imprint, Geiger, Ground Zero. Listen in, and bada boom.
So what's up, Geoff? How's your day going?
Good. How are you guys?
Doing great. Good. Thank you for coming on. Appreciate your time.
I'd love to be here and talking to you guys in New York and Vegas.
Yeah. It's great, Vegas obviously being the home of Tariq Geiger now. And tomorrow we have a really good book. As we're recording this, tomorrow Ground Zero comes out. So what's it been like to kind of have this first book launch with Ghost Machine? Before you've kind of teased like this coming along. I remember when Geiger first came out, you had talked about like, hey, like some other things are coming. We're waiting on some creators. And then at New York Comic Con, you have this big announcement. So what's it been like, the response and sort of, being able to showcase this to the world?
It's been great. After Gary, I've worked with Gary Frank, who's, modern day master. He doesn't even need an introduction if you know comics. But I worked with him since way back when, first on Avengers, then Superman and Batman, Shazam, all this throughout, 20 years now. And after Doomsday Clock, he really wanted to do something different and not superheroes. And so we talked about, I still love genre and the kind of superhero adjacent stuff that wasn't quite the typical, I guess, what you see on the stands with these heroes. And so we talked a long time about Geiger. And when we finished Doomsday Clock, Eric Stevenson had been talking to me for a long time about doing something in Image. And I love Image comics. Like when in my heyday, like it was the launch of Image, like it was Spawn and Savage Dragon and Wildcats and Youngblood. And it was super exciting. And then like Superman died and like, it was like a crazy time for comics. Batman got his back broken. Like it felt really exciting. Everything was changing. And so Image had always been a place that I loved and again was a little nostalgic for me because of the era I grew up in, reading comic books and all these new characters, and they're all so different and they have backstories, and you didn't have to read like, what version of Savage Dragon is this? You just read Savage Dragon or Spawn. And so when Gary and I came up with Geiger, we talked a lot about the world and this universe of characters that were mythic in American history, like Paul Bunyan and John Henry, characters that you've heard of and you don't know if they're real or not. And we wanted to create a whole new, like all these myths that existed, whereas where the timeline came from in Geiger 6. So Gary and I went off and we did it, and the response was great. It's about for those who don't know, it's about a husband and father in a post-nuclear war world where his family is trapped in a fallout shelter, and all he does all day long is protect it from desperate and violent scavengers. And he's devolved himself into this kind of monster of a man. If his family knew what he did to protect them, they might be afraid of him. And he knows that. And through that, I don't want to spoil the first volume who haven't seen it, but through that arc, it's really about this man who's lost himself and become a monster trying to become a man again. And that thematic is just core to who he is. He's always kind of walking the line between being a man and being a monster, both emotionally and psychologically and physically. And so we did that, and then it started to grow, and we were doing Junkyard Joe. And then we started having conversations with other creators like Brian Hitch and Jason Fabok, and I were talking about doing a book at Image. And then, Brad Meltzer and Peter Tomasi and Francis Manipul and all these other folks. There's a few that we haven't announced yet that are going to be announced soon. And we just talked about, we've been working on this for like a year and a half about, hey, if we all came together and formed kind of the first creator-owned and operated company, what would that look like? And we spent a long time building a business and creative plan and talking to Image and talking to the market, and Ghost Machine evolved out of that, really. So it evolved out of a great experience with Image with Geiger. And then really all of us creators wanting to do something different and something where we all had like creative control. We could build the universes. There could be a beginning, middle, and end. I remember writing Green Lantern. I was always, it was a realization when I was wrapping up my run. I was like, oh, there's not going to be an end to this. Like, you can never really write an end to a story when you're working on a monthly superhero book, because they keep going and going and going. And Green Lantern certainly has, and there's been some good runs after mine. But as a storyteller, like, to have a definitive ending at some point is kind of nice, like Invincible, like, it's nice to have that kind of, that final ending. But we all got together, and it grew over just our desire to work together and create some cool new shared universes. I remember when they launched Malibu and Valiant, and there were like all these new characters coming out with Image, and it was exciting. And so that's what we're hoping to do, is just launch brand new characters that people haven't read over and over and over. It's time for something new, I think.
Yeah. I really do like the idea of like these American mythic characters that you kind of described at the New York Comic Con, because I, growing up, was a big fan of like hearing those tales about like Paul Bunyan and Pecos Bill. And so I'm curious to know if there is like a specific mythic American character that you have gotten some inspiration from, or if there's different characters like throughout history that you're like, yeah, I really want to try and breathe fresh life into this story, or something that's happened in history through Geiger, some of the other characters.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Like Redcoat, for example, which is a book that Brian Hitchard and I are doing, came out of a conversation as Brian said, my wife tells me I never learn from my mistakes. And I said, well, if you lived 200 years, would you, or 400 years, or 5? Like, how long does it take for someone to really change? And we came up with kind of the most, maybe unlikable or unheroic character we could think of would be a British soldier fighting against the Americans during the Revolution for a paycheck, and stumbles upon the secrets of mysticism that the founding fathers are actually practicing, and accidentally becomes immortal. And now he has to deal with that. He has no idea how any of his abilities work, if he even has any. He just knows that when he gets shot and dies, he wakes up a little bit time later, completely fine. And so from this guy's, Redcoat's life, his name's Simon. Simon moves through the decades and has a point of view of American history. He can't leave American soil because the spell won't work anymore, and he'll die. And we know this because one of the founding fathers tests that theory and promptly ends up dying. But there's a cool alternate kind of magical American history that's built within that. And there are characters that are both mythic and real people that live, like Albert Einstein, who he has an adventure with when Albert Einstein's 12 years old. And he's this German kid from Munich who comes over here, and they team up on this, they reluctantly team up on this adventure. That's the first arc for Redcoat, where he's got to deal with this kind of know-it-all 12-year-old out on a mission to save his family, and tries to draw Redcoat into it. So all of the characters, they're all called the Unnamed, this collective group, like Junkyard Joe and Geiger and Redcoat, and there's a handful of others, and they're all from different time periods, but they all come from a very emotional place, and their origins are based in today, even though they're in different time periods. The thematics that we're talking about are dealing with today, and rather than being invented in the 40s or the 60s. But we're out to make the best looking books on the stands with compelling central characters and great stories. One of the things that we miss is the titles are the characters, and that's what we've really leaned into with Ghost Machine. All our titles are very character based and character focused, rather than conceptually focused, even though the characters are conceptually created themselves.
I know Chris is itching to ask a question, but I do think you're spot on. Like when you said it's all about that emotion, like these tall tales of like Paul Bunyan and Pecos Bill. Like I remember when I was a kid, of like, I can't wait to read them or hear different stories or different tales I haven't heard before, because they do have that historical aspect. So it makes it feel so much more real. And the stakes somehow seem like they're even bigger than they actually are. And just hearing you talk about Redcoat, and I've read Geiger, I've read Junkyard Joe, that emotion, that energy is definitely there in those books. And for me, it's a page turner. And I want to find out like what's going to happen and find out what's going to be going on in the new book that's coming out tomorrow. So I do think you guys have struck gold. You've got that energy, and I'm definitely here for it. But I'm going to pass it to Chris because I know he's dying to get a word in with a question.
I'll say one more thing about it, Troy and Chris. One more thing is, you know, and you can see from the Junkyard Joe, you know, the story we did that Gary and I did, although these characters coexist in the same kind of timeline, right? They're in different points of the timeline. And they're in a shared universe of the unnamed. Our goal isn't to do like thousands of crossovers, and our goal is to really tell these great characters stories like Junkyard Joe. I'm really proud of that first volume. Like that's it. Gary and I love that book, and it's a beginning, middle, and end, even though the character will continue to operate within the universe. You'll actually see a glimpse of Junkyard Joe and Geiger Ground Zero #2.
Yeah, there's a really good Mike Allred cover. I'm definitely going to be getting. It's amazing. But, you know, sort of why I was excited to ask is you keep, you know, going back to that creative control, and, you know, you've got a lot of great artists like Francis Manipul, Jason Fabak, Gary Frank, Brian Hitch. And, you know, there is a grind when it comes to like monthly books. And it seems like you guys have figured out a way to kind of like, hey, like, how do we sort of bang things in so that we could get these to readers in a way where I think some people get disillusioned sometimes with monthly comics, where they're like, hey, like there's this fill-in issue. I was really buying it because of this artist. So has like, as you talk to the market and build this business, like, has that been something really considered? Like, hey, how do I give these artists the time to, and also put the best books that we could out there so that, you know, there's no gap in quality or anything like that?
Yeah, the key honestly is that we control the schedule. You know, when we've been doing Geiger and Junkyard Joe, it's been shipped for the most part, it's been shipped on time. And that's because we control the schedule. You know, when you work with other companies, they have like fourth quarterly, you know, numbers they need to hit. And so a lot of the times your book will be moved up from like April of the year to November because they want those first two issues. And then you're always behind. You don't get to control the schedule. And controlling the schedule is one big thing of how to make this work, is that we're not soliciting anything we don't want to ship. Like we love, I love going to the comic store every week. And I want people to love going every week. And our goal is to have a book almost every week from Ghost Machine out there, so that when we launch in April following that, almost every week there's a Ghost Machine title out there of high quality. And the artists that do come in and the other artists that we haven't announced yet, they're all top notch. Everyone's a professional. Everyone's incredibly talented, and we're putting everything we have into these books. It's one reason why, like, we're all wrapping up stuff we're doing for DC and Marvel and other things. But that's why we're 100% focused on our Ghost Machine books, because like I wake up and write Geiger, and I'm so happy every day to just dive into that world. And, you know, the first storylines, I'm really happy with it. And to have this gruff, you know, violent, stoic, radioactive, glowing man teamed up with a two-headed wolf, whose heads, by the way, have different personalities. One's really docile and kind of friendly, and the other one's very aggressive. So you got to be careful which one you pet. And you follow him through a journey to find a cure for himself. That's what the monthly book's about. Is like someone has said that someone tells him there's somebody else out there like you that was cured. And I think I can help you find him. And Geiger isn't sure he should believe that or not, and isn't quite sure what the point of that would be. But that's where the adventure kicks off in issue 1, and it builds from there on a crazy road trip. With Geiger, this new unlikely ally, and the two-headed wolf Barney, trekking across the landscape and encountering all sorts of crazy characters. But it is something that we take extremely seriously. Like, we're not just, you know, we want our books to come out when we say they're coming out, and we want our books to be super high quality. And to do that, you really got to focus all your time on one thing, because, you know, you can do creator-owned books and books for DC and books for, you know, different other independent labels. But the more you're spread thin, we have one editor-in-chief. The more you do books for other companies, you're writing 4 books a month, you're talking to 4 different editors, you're having 4 different conversations. It just takes time. And so for us to really focus, we have one core creative unit, and that helps us produce the books we need to produce and spend as much time as we have writing and illustrating rather than being on phone calls and doing logistics.
Yeah, which is funny because me and Troy were talking earlier. It's like Brad and Rob are probably the hardest working people in the company because they're coloring and lettering every book, which was really impressive. And I got to give kudos to you guys because I think sometimes colorists and letterers don't really get the spotlight, and the way you sort of highlight them within the company and also sort of elevate it is it's a really great art. And I love the consistency between the books, which is great.
Yeah, Brad Anderson, like I don't know if there's a better colorist on the planet, and we're lucky to have him. And the same goes with Rob Lee. Like there's no other letterer that's better than Rob. I mean, you look at his work and he puts so much care into it. You guys don't get to see the extra layer of stuff he does. Yeah. He'll give notes on scripts and dialogue. He will, and just on like, hey, you might want to word this way, or this is, I think you meant this, and whatever, and creative thoughts. But he's in that with us. We actually, we actually, because Brad's name's been on the covers of our books, and it's on the cover of Geiger Ground Zero One, and we're like, look, Rob's an artist too, and his work matters. So starting with Geiger Ground Zero #2, Rob's book's going to be our letterer, our lead letterer, Rob his name's going to be on the covers too, because he deserves to have his credit shown. It doesn't cost anything to put his name on the cover, and he deserves it. We really value not just the talent Rob has, but who he is as a human being. We had a summit in New York Comic-Con 2 days prior to the Comic-Con before our launch. I still can't believe that it didn't leak. It's pretty awesome that it did. I said that means no one in this room talked, and all our friends and family who we told, which we all didn't talk either. But the being together in person all together for the very first time, there's about 20 of us. It really, it was more about not just the talent that everybody has and the passion and dedication. Everyone from Mike Cotton, who's our VP of publishing, to Rob, to all the artists and writers and our development people, like everybody was there and added to the conversations and the ideas, and just Kat was there too. Just the kind of I guess the combination of it all, like the unity of it all. It's the energy that these people have. The people that are part of Ghost Machine are curated as the books. These are all good, talented, hardworking people, and they care a lot about great comic books. That's what we want to do, is make people super excited about comic books and super excited about characters that they haven't met before. Like, to get them to read Red Coat and be like, oh my God, I love this character, and find something different and new. And we're trying to put out things that for us are exciting to work on, but for an audience that they haven't seen over and over and over again.
Yeah. One thing I really wanted to ask you about, because like you're super passionate about this, and something it reminds me of is when you were working on Stargirl, it felt like, that was very personal and you got to have creative control over that. So did that experience sort of highlight and kind of color like what it was like going into this, having that control over something? Because you've written a lot of DC stuff, and I'm sure there was a lot of voices where maybe you didn't get to wholly put in what you wanted to, but you're judged on that. And with Stargirl, like I just rewatched it and I'm like, this is the most Geoff Johns TV and film thing I've seen.
Yeah. I mean, Stargirl, for me, it's because I was the showrunner of it, right? So in television, the showrunner, I produced it, I cast it, I write it, I have a writing team I work with. I edit it, I hired the directors, and because it was Stargirl, I created the character. So the reaction to that show was so heartwarming, because the people who watched it and liked it really, really liked it. And it was the same kind of tone that Ghost Machine is that there's a level of, when you get to a certain place, there's like a level of control you want. And it's not about your idea. It's about collaborating with great people that are super talented and making it the best it can be, but still having a vision for what it can be and should be. And that's what Stargirl was. So Stargirl is the most, tonally and story-wise, it's as close to one of my DC comics, if you're reading it, as anything else I've done, because it has the cliffhangers and the characters and the emotional turns. And that's what I love. I love when it's about something, and the optimism and the great action scenes. I mean, Walter Garcia was our stunt coordinator, and he directed some episodes, and man, he was so good. And our VFX team, Zoic, was so good. But in that, it was like, working with an artist like Gary, you get to, as a showrunner, essentially hire and cast everybody that is on the floor in making the show. And I moved to Atlanta and shot that for, it was a course of, I think, over about 3.5, 4 years. And when we shot, I moved to Atlanta and lived there. I was on set every day, because that's how you keep everything positive. That's how you keep everything tonally accurate. You come up with ideas on the set that day. Actors would have ideas. They'd have, it's all about, again, collaborating with great people. It's not about, hey, this is my idea and finally no one's going to change it. It's more about, this is the path we're going on, and the path is not super narrow. It's a little wide. So as long as we get to the destination and we're all talented and we're all hardworking, and we're all treating each other with respect, it produces something that, at the end of the day, you can be really proud of. Stargirl is by far and away, just because of the personal connection to my sister, obviously, but far and away, like that for anything DC media was the most rewarding experience I've ever had because of that. And all the actors and the cast and the crew they became really great friends of mine. Actually, I have something really quick. I got this.
Oh, no.
Ooh, nice. Everyone that's listening, you can't see it, but it just showed us the Stargirl staff.
Is that the one from the show?
Yes, there are several from the show that were screen used because you have to have extra props. But yeah, I got one of them.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. At Comic-Con, though, you guys showed what looked like a little snippet of test footage for a live action Geiger series.
Oh, that's actually previs. It's kind of rough animated previs for the live action series that we've been developing with Paramount and Justin Simeon, who's set to direct. We actually just met with Justin and his team yesterday on it. Now that the SAG strike is over, hopefully it can get back. We were just about to cast it, so hopefully it can get back up and running. But we'll see. But I'm really excited about that. I love the pilot, and it'd be fun to do that show. So hopefully it comes together.
One request, though, you hire Walter Garcia again, because the Stargirl fights, the fight with the Crocs in the supermarket is one of the best superhero fights of all time. So if I could get one request in, you just hit up Walter for that show, and
will 100% be one of the first calls I make, and most of the crew. He was great. One of the things I loved about Stargirl was that it's called Stargirl. It features a teenage character, but we went for it for the action. Really, we wanted to make the action fight scenes another level. So when you watched it, you're like, wait, what's going on? And I'm really, again, proud of the work that we all did on that.
No, but it's amazing what you guys were able to accomplish, and sort of what's it been like sort of getting in this new period of your career? Obviously, you've had a long career in comics, and that kind of has informed where you're at now. So what's it been like sort of taking what you've learned from that experience at DC, show running, writing films, doing all of it, and sort of be in this position to kind of, imprint readers in a different way, like be in charge of the marketing, sort of the publishing ideas and all that. And it is an interesting time in comics. I do think comics is in a period where they need something like a Ghost Machine, where you could kind of like, hey, like something people could invest in. Because me as a reader, there's a lot of books I invest in, and then after 6 issues, they're like, oh, we're relaunching it, or we're doing this and that. So I think there are people hungry to buy in. So it is something great to sort of see what you guys are doing. But what's it been like to sort of be on that side of things?
Well, when we started this, I think the market wasn't quite in the place it is now, but we all agree, like we want to create something exciting for readers. And, it's always great when everyone's doing well, when Marvel and DC and Image and Boom and Dark Horse, everyone's putting out great books. And so we just want to create, something that is undeniably exciting. Like we want to put things on the stands that make people want to read. And I think having characters that are as emotionally captivating as the other stories that we've worked on with established characters and new characters and beautiful artwork and bringing our sensibilities, our kind of sensibilities from our work, our previous work on Marvel and DC into a new place and a new arena, and taking everything we've learned across the board from video games to toys. Like, people have designed statues. Like, everybody in our company has done so much. Even convention experiences, everyone's done so much, that we're all in it together, and we're all talking about it all the time, every day. Like, here's an idea, here's an idea, here's an idea, with a focus on making great comic books, and just being a positive corner in the comic book industry. That's what we want to do. But we couldn't have done it if we didn't all bring our experience that we've had in everything to this. Like, it's really, if we tried to do this earlier, it wouldn't be the same as it is now.
I know earlier you mentioned that Junkyard Joe, great book, got a good middle, beginning, end, not in that order. But there's already one trade out for it. Is there any possibility where there'll be a continuation of that story, or is it going to be kind of just seeing him sprinkled throughout the stories of the universe?
I wouldn't say sprinkled so much. The characters that are mentioned on that timeline play a pretty integral role to the universe of the Unnamed. We've got 4 universes we're launching, 4 shared universes we're launching, and the Unnamed is kind of the main one that rolls Gary and I's characters we've already established up into Ghost Machine. So it's Geiger, Junkyard Joe, Redcoat, a character called the Northerner, a few others. But they'll all be, I don't want to spoil it too much, they'll all be, you'll see, Junkyard Joe is a character that was created and established, and he will be there. There's also something really cool that's happening with the character of Junkyard Joe in merchandise that I hopefully will announce it soon, but it's so cool to watch it come together, which is really fun. But the Unnamed, all those characters on that timeline will play pretty big roles. And some, you'll see them not just in kind of, sprinkled necessarily, but as active players in stories and in their own stories and in other stories. And it'll be integrated, but in a very judicious way. Like, we're not trying to cram all these characters together and, have them interweave and you have to buy every single book. But we're marching towards, different stories that will have them commingle, I'd say. And and then we have, from Jason Fabak, we have Rook Exodus, which is this big sci-fi epic that looks pretty badass.
It looks amazing.
Yeah, his art is insane. We've been working on this since Batman 3 Jokers. He's putting everything into it. And then we have Pete Francis's book, The Rockefellers, which anchors this fun family Pixar, Hanna-Barbera universe of characters. And he's got a second book with an artist that we'll be announcing soon that's in there. And then we have a horror universe, which we'll be talking about very soon too, but I can't get into that.
Man, I don't know when you got time to sleep, man, because I'm just excited about Junkyard Joe and Geiger. And then you're like, oh yeah, but you forget about all these other things. And it's like, you guys are probably working 24/7.
Yeah, well, it's really exciting and really fun to when you're doing something you love, you just keep doing it.
Yeah.
So, feel like work.
Yeah, I mean, you could feel that too at the booth you guys had, just seeing the energy you guys have with each other. I can remember sort of waiting online to get something signed and seeing you bring a bunch of books to show like Lamont that you had maybe gotten at the convention. So to kind of see like the way you guys interact, it truly is like creator owned and focused, which is great. I think people like really invest in the creators as readers. How many times you follow someone no matter where they go. So I think this is the time to kind of really dive into something like that, because if you look at, I'm sure like not just me, but everyone's been waiting for what Fabak does after 3 Jokers. You guys, I can't throw a rock without seeing 3 Jokers somewhere or his art. Like I think his art is probably in rooms everywhere now because of those covers. So it's been really great to kind of see you guys invest in that way, and really sort of find a way to deliver, because I'm sure you guys have all gotten to that stage in your career where you're like, okay, I've done the things I needed to do. Like, how do I do what I want to do now?
That's right. And work with the people you want to work with. Everybody on the team, we're there's more creators that are part of the company than there are, infrastructure. And most of these other independent companies are editorial structures that hire talent. And we flipped that, right? We're the only company that's flipped that. We're the creators that hire our editors and hire our infrastructure and our marketing and our PR. Like we've actually flipped that upside down. So that's why it works the way it does. But we're all at a place in our careers where, Brad and Lamont's he's been producing and writing television for years and years. I mean, this guy is super skilled and loves comic books. And so everybody comes from not just a writing and illustrating point of view, but also producing point of view and a business point of view. So we have it, and we're just creating a business, basically a business that thrives and builds and works so that we can create what we want and work with who we want and have fun doing it. And Ghost Machine, it really, the logo and the symbol, I think the reason that, I love wearing the hat. It's a cool looking hat anyway, but I love the logo. We all just support it because it means something personally to us. Ghost Machine, like it came from, we talked a lot about different names and we landed on it, and it came from Gary Frank actually came up with it. And it came from that phrase. It was introduced in the late 40s, and a French philosopher introduced as ghost in the machine, as the spirit in the body, but two separate things. And then, programmers talk about it. Most people know about it as a program or something in a computer that doesn't do what it's supposed to do, and you can't explain why. And so we feel like we are the ghost in the machine. We want to be that, that group of creators that aren't, under lock and key or control, that we get to create what we want. And we are there. We are part of the team. So if you're buying a Ghost Machine book, you know who the creators are. There'll be other creators that come in and writers and artists that come in, but it will be consistently, the talent you see and then additional talent. And I think that consistency and that unity is what's going to make Ghost Machine titles special. And after the summit we had with everybody in New York before the announcement, we all bonded in a very deep way. And the symbol of Ghost Machine became something more. It became something, like we see your value. Everyone wants to be valued for what and who they are and what they bring to the table as both their talent and a human being. And for me, Ghost Machine became like, this is a place where people see you, where people see your value, and they're excited about what you're going to do, and they support it. And that's where it started, and that's where it's going.
One of my favorite Geoff Johns legends is you working at Richard Donner's office as his assistant and all that, and sort of finding the script to Goonies 2. Is there a script in your office that people, if people found, they would have the same reaction to?
Oh my God, you mean my scripts I've written or scripts I have? Oh, scripts I've written. There is, there's one book, I wrote it, it's so long ago now. Originally, this is so long ago. Jeff Loeb was writing All-Star Batman originally. And they had come to me to ask me to do an arc after he had done 12 issues, and they wanted me to start right away because there was a very slow artist drawing it. So I actually wrote the first issue, and it was a very different type of All-Star Batman than what Frank Miller and Jim Lee wrote, because originally Jeff was going to write that book, and then he actually went to Marvel. That's when he went to Marvel. So Frank took the writing duties over, and they changed it completely, and we shelved the story I was working on. So All-Star Batman and Robin number 13, I've got that sitting around somewhere on my computer. I wrote this is so obscure, but this can tell you how much I really loved Image Comics. I actually, when I was first trying to write scripts and just getting a feel of it for comic books, there's a character in Youngblood called Photon, and I wrote an 8-page Photon story. And I really like that story. I think it's in a format that I can't even open anymore, but it was like the first kind of an Image Comics, story. I do have, there's other things I probably can't talk about just in case. I do have I do have other stuff. I have proposals for some books that didn't happen. Maybe I'll share them online someday. that, and with Ghost Machine now, like those look more unlikely to happen. There's one big project that got greenlit, and it's not going to happen because we're doing Ghost Machine. That it's a pretty damn good outline, but it's, you know, if Ghost Machine wasn't such a huge priority, and we would have done it, but it is. But in my own personal script collection, I have a way old Flash screenplay that's a really crazy screenplay where, like, he gets a speed. He's in a wheelchair and he gets a speed when someone puts the Shroud of Turin on his legs. It's crazy. And I don't even know where it's from. I don't even know I don't remember who wrote it. I have that, but anyway, I've got some crazy stuff on my computer and in my closet.
I thought you were going to say you wrote that. I was like, Geoff,
yeah, no,
what was going on in your life at that time?
It's gotta be like, well, I found it at like a convention way back when, because they used to sell screenplays, like they sell these screenplays, and it came from somewhere. It was written for Warner Brothers. It never happened. I think I used to have I think somebody sent me another script for, I forget who it was. I have a Sergeant Rock script, but it takes place in the future. It's crazy. Like, the scripts are all over the place. But anyway, I got some stuff in my hard drive.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Thank you, Geoff, for sharing this time with us. We're really appreciative, and we're glad that you're sort of at this point where you can launch it to the world. So where can people find Ghost Machine?
So we're at ghostmachinepro.com. You can find us at YouTube, Instagram, Facebook at ghostmachinepro.com. Geiger Ground Zero #1 hits tomorrow. It's a 2-part series, kind of a prologue to Ghost Machine #1, which hits January 24th. In Ghost Machine #1, we'll have stories and introductions and art for all of our characters and creators, and a couple surprises that haven't been announced yet. 2 artists at least that haven't been announced that are in that. And so, Geiger Ground Zero is kind of a prologue, like a year 1 of Geiger that could get everybody up to speed if they want to check that out. Beautiful books, artwork by Gary Frank, and it sets the stage for the monthly Geiger book that happens in April. And we're marching towards Ghost Machine #1, which is a big 64-page one-shot with just about every initial title from our company spotlighted in that and introduced. So it'd be a good book to get.
Nice. Well, Geoff, thank you so much for coming on. If you haven't yet, make sure you go to your local comic shop, get your copy of Geiger. It's going to be coming out Wednesday, November 15th. And with that, bada boom.
Bada boom.
Thank you for listening to the Bada Boom podcast. Keep the conversation going on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. Get in the comments on our YouTube channel and let us know what you'd like to hear next. And please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen.